The challenge begins here was a quiet tension in the lecture hall as the guest speaker was announced. Students whispered to each other, eyes full of curiosity. They had heard the rumors. Someone important was visiting today. Someone who had once walked the same dusty corridors, eaten in the same noisy cafeteria, and studied under the same flickering lights. Sundar Pichai. He walked in slowly, calmly, with the air of someone who didn't need to prove anything. Yet his eyes, soft and thoughtful, scanned the room as if he were still a student curious, searching, humble. Everyone clapped. Some stood. Others recorded. But Sundar raised one hand gently, his smile modest. "I'm just here to talk," he said, softly into the mic. "To listen and maybe learn something too." The crowd chuckled. But he wasn't joking. 5 minutes in, everyone was leaning forward. "When I was your age," he began, "I was afraid of asking questions, afraid they'd think I wasn't smart enough. I stayed quiet. Now I know. Asking the right question is sometimes smarter than knowing the answer." Some students nodded. One girl did and single quotes T. She sat in the back, arms folded, sharp eyes, not blinking once. Her name was Aanya. She was 16, already taking college-level courses, rumored to have an IQ higher than Einstein. She never spoke unless it was to correct someone. Professors had grown used to her quiet critiques. And today, she had decided something. Sundar Pichai didn't impress her. As Sundar spoke about humility, about teamwork, about failing better. She raised her hand slowly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clear but not loud. "Why should we listen to someone who got lucky?" The room froze. A professor shifted uncomfortably. Sundar didn't. He smiled gently. "That's a good question," he said. And why I didn't smile back? "You talk about failing. But you didn't fail. You went to IT, then Stanford, then Google. Most people here fail and stay failed. Your story gives false hope." The room was silent. Even the birds outside seemed to stop chirping. Sundar walked a few steps closer. "You're right," he said. "I had help. My father saved for years to buy me a ticket to the US. My professors supported me. Not everyone gets that. I don't want to give false hope. I want to give honest hope." Annie's expression didn't change. "But," Sundar continued, "since you're asking tough questions, maybe you'd like to challenge me." Some students chuckled nervously. Sundar's tone wasn't mocking. He was sincere. A lean forward. "Challenge you how?" "A debate," he said. "You and me. No scripts, just thoughts." Now the room exploded with whispers. "Are you serious?" Anya asked. "Very," Sundar said. "Fine," she said. "Tomorrow." And that's how it began. That night, Anya sat by her window, staring at the stars. She had read all of Sundar's work. She respected his mind, but she didn't admire his philosophy. She believed the world rewarded the ruthless. Kindness was weakness. Humility was a mask. And she was determined to prove it. Meanwhile, Sundar sat in a quiet guest room, sipping chai, remembering his own teenage anger, the feeling of not being heard, of thinking the world was unfair. He didn't want to defeat Anya. He wanted to understand her. But he also knew this debate would not be simple, because behind Anya's cold eyes, he had seen something: pain. And pain, more than genius, makes people dangerous. The next day, the lecture hall was overflowing. Cameras, phones, even local reporters. The debate was about to begin. A professor introduced them both. "Sundar Pichai," he said, "CEO, thinker, and believer in humble leadership. Anya," he added, "student, prodigy, and perhaps the sharpest mind we've ever seen." Anya stood, her eyes locked on Sundar. No smile, no nerves. Sundar stood too. Still calm, still soft-spoken. "Our topic," the professor announced. Is humility a strength or a weakness in today's world?" Anya stepped forward. "I'll begin," she said. And for the next 7 minutes, she delivered a speech that stunned everyone. She quoted data. She used neuroscience, evolutionary psychology, and real-world examples to argue that humility slows progress. That confidence, even arrogance, wins wars, builds empires, and gets results. She spoke of how leaders who hesitate are often replaced. How the world doesn't reward kindness but visibility. Not soft voices, but loud ones. Some students clapped before she even finished. Sundar nodded. Very well said, he replied. You've done your homework? Then he stepped forward. Humility, he began, is not about lowering yourself. It's about raising others. And in a world of endless noise, listening is more powerful than shouting. He shared stories of teams he had led, of engineers who were brilliant but couldn't work with others. He shared how listening to a junior employee once saved Google from $1 billion mistake. We remember the loud ones. He said, but the ones who truly change the world are often quiet. Anya didn't flinch. When Sundar finished. The room applauded. Less loud, more thoughtful. And then came the surprise. Can I ask you something personal? Sundar said, looking directly at Anya. She hesitated. Go ahead. Who hurt you? Yes, softly. A gasp swept the room. Anya blinked. Once. Sundar continued. Your arguments are strong. But they come from pain, not belief. I know because I've been there too. Anya's lips tightened. I lost a scholarship once because I trusted someone, she said, her voice suddenly quieter. They took my project and claimed it. I was 15. I learned then that being nice doesn't pay. The hall was dead. Silent. Sundar nodded. I'm sorry that happened. Don't be, she said. It made me stronger. But did it make you happier? Sundar asked. Anya didn't answer. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't sure. Outside, it had started to rain. Students whispered. Professors watched, unsure what to do next. But Sundar just stepped back and bowed slightly. Thank you for sharing that, he said. Anya looked at him, confused. The debate isn't over, she said. No, Sundar replied. It's only just begun. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Anya standing in silence. Heart pounding. Confused. And for the first time. Curious. A war of minds in Morias rain tapped gently on the window panes as the night deepened. Inside her small, cluttered room, Anya sat at her desk, staring at an old photograph she thought she'd thrown away years ago. It was faded, the corners bent, but the image was clear enough. 2 girls in school uniforms, arms around each other, smiling. One of them was Anya. The other was Ria. Ria had been her best friend. And her biggest mistake? The betrayal still echoed in her memory. They were 15, working together on a national science project. Anya had done most of the research, stayed up through countless nights, running tests, fixing code, documenting. Everything. Ria, charming and popular, handled the presentation. And when it came time to submit the project for evaluation, Ria went behind her back, registered it under her own name, and won the scholarship that had been meant for both of them. No apology ever came. No explanation. Ria left for a foreign university. Anya stayed, bitter, sharp, and alone. And now, years later, Sundar Pichai had looked her in the eyes and asked the one question she had buried under layers of logic, calculation, and pride. Who hurt you? Anya hadn't expected to feel anything. She thought she had buried the past in ambition. But Sundar's voice, gentle, steady, without judgment, had stirred something. She stood, paced the room, opened her notebook, and began scribbling notes. Not arguments this time, but questions. Ideas. Contradictions. Things Sundar had said. Things she couldn't easily disprove. Did it make you happier? He had asked. She didn't know. But she wanted to. Sundar was staying at a modest guest house near campus. Despite the attention he drew wherever he went, he had never liked luxury. He believed it dulled the mind. Instead, he preferred simple spaces, clean air, and long walks that cleared the clutter in his thoughts. He stood now on the balcony, watching the rain wash the leaves, thinking of Anya not as an opponent, but as a mirror. He had been like her once, sharp-edged, impatient, convinced that the world owed him something for all he had endured, but life had shown him otherwise. It had shown him the power of patience, the necessity of kindness, and the strength it took not to retaliate, but to forgive. He remembered his own story. When Sundar had first arrived in the US, he had nothing. No winter coat, no laptop, no money for more than one proper meal a day. His accent made people underestimate him. Professor spoke fast. Classmates worked in groups that didn't always include him. There were nights he cried silently into his pillow, wondering if he had made a mistake coming so far from home. But there was one Professor Dr. Helen Marsh who had seen something in him. She once told him, "Your intelligence is obvious, Sundar, but your curiosity, that's rare. Never lose that." He hadn't, and now he saw that same curiosity in Anya. But it was trapped under armor. An armor she had built out of betrayal and loneliness. He didn't want to break that armor. He wanted her to see it and decide whether she still needed it. The next day, the hall was even more packed. Word had spread far beyond the campus. Students from neighboring universities had arrived. Bloggers, even parents. Some came out of admiration for Sundar. Others came to witness the rare sight of someone daring to challenge him. And some came to see Anya fall, but she didn't look nervous. She walked to the podium wearing a plain black kurta, her hair tied back, a thick file in her hand. She was calm, focused, precise. Her eyes scanned the crowd, but when they landed on Sundar, they stayed there. "Yesterday," she began, "I argued that humility slows success. That in a world where competition is survival, soft traits don't win battles. Today, I'm not here to repeat those points. I'm here to ask different questions." A hush fell over the crowd. Double quotes, "Mr. Pichai," she said, turning to him. "You speak of listening, of raising others, of quiet leadership, but how you lead in a world that often doesn't listen back. When others take credit, when people lie, when trust is broken, what does humility solve then?" Sundar rose slowly, nodding with genuine interest. "Thank you for that question," he said. "It's one I've asked myself many times." He didn't walk to the podium. He just stood there, in front of everyone, hands folded, speaking like one would to a friend. "You're right," he said. "The world can be unfair. People will hurt you. They will lie. They will take what's yours. And yes, if all you do is stay quiet, you'll be left behind." Anya narrowed her eyes, but she said nothing. "But," Sundar continued, "humility doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean being passive. It means knowing your value without needing to shout it. It means standing your ground without stepping on someone else's." He paused, letting the words breathe. "I've made decisions at Google that were unpopular, that cost us short-term gains, but I believe they were right. Not because they made me look smart, but because they made the company stronger. Being humble doesn't mean you don't lead. It means you lead without ego." Anya stepped closer. "But what about when people betray you?" Now the air grew heavy. Students leaned in. Sundar's voice softened. "I've been betrayed," he said, "by people I trusted. Some took ideas. Others twisted my words. And yes, it hurt. But I learned something important. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself." Anya's jaw tightened. "You forgive, even if they never apologize?" "Especially then," Sundar replied. The room was silent, because if you don't, he added, "you stay stuck in their mistake." After the debate, the judges didn't declare a winner. They didn't need to dot. Both had spoken truth. Both had exposed vulnerability. And in doing so, both had earned something far more valuable than applause. They had earned each other's respect. Anya sat alone on a bench later that evening, watching the sun dip below the trees. She didn't notice Sundar until he sat beside her, quietly. They said nothing for a while. Then Anya spoke. "You were right. I'm still angry." "It's okay to be," Sundar said, "but I don't want to be anymore." He smiled. That's the beginning. Anya turned to him, her expression unreadable. I want to show you something. Okay, Sundar said, she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Inside was a project proposal bold, complex, deeply researched. It was about building AI systems to detect cognitive patterns in early childhood education, helping identify gifted children in underfunded schools. Sundar read through the first few pages, then looked up. This is incredible. Thank you, Anya said, and for the first time, her voice held no edge. But no one will fund it. They think I'm too young. Or too intense. They're wrong, he said. You really think so? He nodded. You've been sharpening a sword for years. Now it's time to build with it, not cut. Anya blinked. Back sudden tears. Why are you being kind to me? She asked. I was not exactly polite. Because someone was once kind to me, Sundar said, but I didn't deserve it either. And then, just as quietly, he stood and left. NYA sat there, staring at the folder in her hands, and something inside her shifted, not broken, not fixed. But beginning. Far away. In another city, Ria scrolled through her phone. Her inbox was filled with messages. You see this girl? One of them said. The prodigy who debated Sundar Pichai? Ria clicked the video link. And froze. It was a NYA holder now, but unmistakable. Ria single quotes S hand trembled. And for the first time in years, she felt afraid. Asterisk. The ghost of betrayal. Ria sat in the dim light of her downtown apartment. The video paused on her screen. The room was still except for the quiet hum of the city outside, a distant siren, the occasional car passing below. On her laptop, Anya stood frozen mid-sentence, fire in her eyes, intelligence in every breath, confidence in every movement. But Ria didn't see confidence. She saw memory. Guilt, like a slow-moving fog, began to curl around the corners of her mind. She hadn't spoken to Anya in years. Not since the science fair. Not since the lie. Ria had told herself she did the right thing. Back then, everything had felt urgent. Her father had just lost his job. Her mother was working 3 shifts. The scholarship was her ticket out. When the organizers said only one name could be on the submission, she had panicked. And instead of telling the truth, she made the easy choice, the selfish one. She told herself Anya would recover. She told herself Anya would understand. But deep down, Ria knew Anya never forgave her. And now she was on stage debating Sundar Pichai, poised, brilliant, and unforgettable. Ria's chest tightened. Not from jealousy. Not even from fear. From shame. She had taken a shortcut. Had taken the long road. And now the world was watching. In Delhi. Anya was walking the campus path slowly, the air still carrying the softness of monsoon rain. Students passed her, some nodding shyly, others whispering after she passed. People had started recognizing her. Her inbox was full. Invitations, offers, compliments. People wanted interviews. Tech companies were reaching out. The world was noticing. But Anya didn't feel victorious. She felt something. Stranger. Peace. And confusion. She kept thinking about Sundar's words. You've been sharpening a sword for years. Now it's time to build with it, not cut. She didn't know how to do that. Building meant trusting. And trust had always been her weakest muscle. Back in her room, she sat at her desk, trying to work on the project again. The AI for early childhood education. She opened her code, refined her logic, improved her data sets. But her mind wandered. Not to Sundar. To Ria, the last person she wanted to think about. But that question kept poking at her. What if Ria had apologized back then? What if she had admitted the mistake? Would it have changed anything? Anya had replayed that moment 100 times. How she found out. How Ria avoided her. How the school called it a misunderstanding. How the scholarship slipped away, and with it, her trust in people. But now, she wasn't sure anymore if holding on to that anger had made her stronger. Or just LONELIE or. And then, as if summoned by thought, her phone lit up. An email. Subject. I owe you more than an apology from Ria. Mirenya stared at it for almost 5 full minutes, then opened it. Hi, Anya. I know this email might come as a shock. I saw your debate with Sundar Pichai. I saw you. And I realized I've been running from something for a very long time. What I did was wrong. I never should have submitted the project under my name alone. I panicked. I convinced myself you'd be fine, that you didn't need the scholarship as much as I did, but that was a lie. You deserve better. I can't undo what happened, but I want to talk to you. In person. If you'll allow it. If not, I'll understand. Rianya sat back, the room spinning slowly. It was the apology she had dreamed of and dreaded. Meanwhile, Sundar was preparing to leave the campus. His visit had been extended twice already. He was scheduled to speak in Bangalore next. But something about this place kept pulling at him. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was Anya. Maybe it was the feeling that his work here wasn't quite finished. His assistant knocked gently on the door. Your car is ready, she said. Thank you, he replied, standing with a small suitcase in hand. Then he paused. Can you delay the flight? He asked. For how long? I'm not sure yet, he said, and walked toward the campus gate. He needed to see her one more time. The meeting between Anya and Ria took place in a small cafe near campus neutral ground. Quiet, tucked between bookstores and stationery shops. Ria arrived first, dressed simply, hair pulled back, face pale with nerves. Anya arrived second. She walked in slowly, scanning the room until their eyes met. Neither smiled. You look, Ria began, then stopped. Older, Anya offered. Ria gave a soft laugh. Different. They sat across from each other. Silence stretched. Then finally Anya spoke. You sent the email. Ria nodded. I meant every word. Why now? Anya asked. Why not years ago? Because I was a coward, Ria said. I thought if I ignored it long enough, it would disappear. But it didn't. It followed me. I got the scholarship. I went to MIT. I built a career, but nothing ever felt earned. Every win had your shadow on it. Anya looked down at her hands. She didn't know what she wanted to hear. Part of her wanted Ria to suffer, but another part just wanted answers. Do you regret it? She asked. Ria looked her in the eyes. Yes, she said, more than anything. Anya's breath caught. For so long, she had imagined this moment. Imagine yelling or walking out or turning the table. But instead, she just felt tired, and sad. I built my whole life around that betrayal, she whispered. It became the reason I didn't trust anyone. The reason I kept my guard up. It made me smarter, sharper, but it also made me afraid. Ria's eyes welled with tears. I'm sorry. Anya looked at her for a long time, then said quietly, I know. And for the first time, the past loosened its grip. Not completely, but enough. Outside. Sundar watched them from across the street. He didn't approach. He didn't interrupt. He just smiled. A small, proud, quiet smile. Then he turned, walked down the street, and disappeared into the crowd. His work here was done. Or so he thought, because just as the past had returned through Ria, a far more dangerous threat was watching from the shadows, one that would test Anya's growth. And Sundar's legacy. In a way neither of them could have expected. The shadow in Silicon Valley, air in San Francisco, carried a different weight. It was the kind of air that tasted of ambition and anxiety. Startups rising and falling in the same week, ideas being sold faster than they could be lived. There was no stillness here, only acceleration. In the towering glass buildings of Silicon Valley, competition didn't sleep, it calculated. And in the corner office of a tall, silent tower, someone else had been watching the story unfold from thousands of miles away. His name was Neil. Varma. You wouldn't find him on Google. His name didn't show up in press releases, nor did it appear on conference guest lists. But his influence reached deep into the tech world's hidden corridors. He had once been one of the youngest engineers at Google, brilliant, ambitious, and cunning. In his early days, Sundar Pichai had seen potential in him, mentored him, protected him from boardroom politics, recommended him for promotion. But Neil didn't want mentorship. He wanted power. He watched as Sundar rose through the ranks, not by manipulation, but through quiet leadership, and that gnawed at Neil. Because in Neil's world, silence was weakness, kindness was a delay tactic. He believed in dominance, in taking what you wanted and crushing whoever stood in your way. When Sundar was named CEO, Neil left the company quietly, strategically, and swore to build something bigger. He succeeded. He built a competing firm, Veritas, systems focused on artificial intelligence and global data integration. On paper, it looked innovative. Underneath, it was ruthless. Veritas had no board oversight, no transparency, no ethical review. They moved fast, sometimes too fast. And when questioned, Neil had one answer. Results speak for themselves. For years, he ignored Sundar until one day, scrolling through industry chatter, he saw a name, a girl from Gali, young, brilliant, sharp, and rising fast. But what caught his eye wasn't her project. It was the debate. He watched the footage silently, her voice calm, her logic piercing, her confidence unshaken. He watched how Sundar spoke to her, how he defended humility, how he passed the torch without saying a word, and something inside Neil snapped, because for the first time, he saw the next version of Sundar, not a clone. Successor, and Neil hated her instantly, not because she was brilliant, because she reminded him of what he could never become. And YA was in her room, finishing the final testing phase of her AI education system. The model was working. It could accurately identify cognitive diversity in children under the age of 6 using voice analysis, behavioral patterns, and simple interactive games. The data was anonymized. The results were stunning. She submitted it to several academic panels. And 1 week later, a leading international education summit invited her to present in person. The event was insane. Francisco. She didn't hesitate. When she told Sundar about it over a video call, he simply smiled. "You're ready," he said. "I'm nervous." She replied, "Good," he said. "That means you care." The summit was held at a sprawling convention center near the Bay, a place buzzing with technology leaders, educators, policymakers, and investors. Banners hung from the walls. Keynote sessions were running in every direction. Screens flashed with buzzwords: future, intelligence, inclusion, innovation. Aanya stood backstage, holding her laptop tightly, trying to breathe through the storm inside her chest. She had never spoken at something this big. She wasn't afraid of the crowd. She was afraid of what would come after. Expectation, judgment, and change. But the moment she stepped on stage, her mind cleared, the lights softened, her voice returned. And for the next 18 minutes, she gave a presentation that didn't just explain her system, it made people feel it. She shared the stories behind the numbers. The child who had been labeled slow, but turned out to be gifted in spatial reasoning. The village school where her prototype increased learning outcomes by 30% in just 6 months. When she finished, the applause was slow at first. Then it grew. Then it became a standing ovation. And Yi didn't smile. She just nodded once, quietly, and walked off stage. But as she stepped into the hallway, someone was waiting. A man in a charcoal suit, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. "Impressive," he said. "You have your mentor's grace?" She blinked. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "Not yet," he said, "but you will." He held out a card, black, embossed, no logo, just a name. Neil Varmash took it, cautiously. "What is this?" "An invitation," he said, "to a real opportunity. Sundar Pichai gave you a stage. I can give you the world." And then he was gone. That night in her hotel room, Aanya searched the name and found almost nothing. No social media. No interviews. No images. Only whispers. A few anonymous threads. Mentions in patent filings. A Reddit post about a lawsuit that vanished. She asked Sundar about him. The next day, his face changed instantly. Quiet. Serious. Neil Varma is what happens when genius loses its conscience. He said Dada and why I waited. I tried to help him, Sundar said. He didn't want help. He wanted control. Should I stay away from him? She asked. I can't tell you what to do, he said. But know this, Neil doesn't admire brilliance. He recruits it to destroy it. And if he can't control you, he'll try to break you. Anya looked at the card again. It suddenly felt heavier. Days later. Back in India, she received an email from a global venture firm offering her full funding for her AI project, $2 million in initial seed money, a dedicated research team, and full international exposure. The sender? Veritas System Satch was a short message. We believe in your future. Don't let old minds limit new vision. Let's build the world you deserve. And van below that, an NDA.non-disclosure.binding.final.aanya sat there, heart pounding. This wasn't just about money. This was about the direction of everything she had worked. For two doors stood before her. One open to ethics, legacy, and patience. The other to speed, power, and risk. She had trusted no one for years. And now, the one person she had started to believe in, Sundar, was warning her. But the other voice, the one that had grown up in betrayal, whispered, maybe this time take the shortcut. Asterisk the cost of acceleration. The sun hung low in the sky as Anya stood at the edge of the rooftop garden. The city below stretched like a maze of glowing lines and restless noise. Her phone was in her hand. The offer from Veritas Systems stared back at her from the screen. It was real. She had checked. Every number, every clause. The funding was there. The resources. The reach. The promise of building her dream not in 10 years, but in 2. But her chest was heavy because every line of the contract carried something unspoken. A silence that wasn't peaceful. A silence that threatened everything she had built, her identity. Her independence, her integrity, her intention. Sundar had warned her, but he hadn't begged. He had trusted her to choose, and that made it harder. Because when someone believes in you, their silence is louder than any warning. The next evening, Anya met Neil Varma. It was not in an office, not in a boardroom, not in the kind of places where power wears suits and pretends to be polite. It was in a private art gallery in downtown San Francisco. Minimalist, modern, too clean, too quiet. The kind of place where every step echoed, every piece on the wall seemed to watch you. Neil was already there. He wore no tie, no mask of charm. His presence didn't demand attention, it consumed it. His eyes weren't just intelligent. They were calculating, always moving, always measuring. I knew you'd come, he said, simply. In reply. She walked beside him as he guided her through the gallery. On the walls were abstract pieces, fractured lines, bleeding shapes, chaos painted as vision. What do you see when you look at this? Neil asked, pointing to one canvas. Anya looked. It was a swirl of broken geometry, clashing colors, and a central black hole pulling everything in. Disorder, she said. Freedom, he replied. She glanced at him. People fear breaking the system, Neil continued. But systems are built by people, flawed people, people with agendas. And your mentor, Sundar, he plays within those lines. Safe, slow, apologetic. He turned to her fully now. You could do more in 2 years at Veritas than he did in 10. At Google. Double quotes, Anya folded her arms. What do you want from me? He smiled. Nothing more than what you already are. You're offering me everything, she said. But what are you taking? Only the things you no longer need, he said smoothly. Doubt. Approval. Waiting for permission. Anya stared at him. For years, she had lived without trust. Without softness, she had earned every inch of her space. And here, Neil Varma wasn't insulting her intelligence. He was admiring it, feeding it, validating The version of herself she had built after Ria's betrayal. The part that believed. Kindness got you stolen from. That humility slowed you down. That power was not something you waited for, but something you took. And yet, a flicker of unease moved through her. Not from what Neil was saying, but from what he wasn't. A week later, the announcement came. Aanya joined Veritas Systems as head of ethical AI research. Tech World exploded. Blogs lit up. News anchors called her the next big thing. Investors cheered. Young coders celebrated. But Sundar didn't say anything. No email. No call. Not even a message. And that silence hurt more than any headline. Asterisk. In her new office, overlooking the Pacific, everything was faster. Teams moved on her command. Resources arrived before she requested them. Assistants handled logistics. Marketing teams polished her name into a brand. And the AI model she had spent years slowly building. It was now being optimized by 20 engineers in 12 countries, running simulations faster than she thought possible. And yet, beneath the surface, something shifted. She noticed things. Lines of code added without her approval. A suggestion to simplify the consent protocols. Performance enhancement that reduced privacy checks. Small things. Justified things. But troubling things. When she questioned it, the lead engineer smiled gently. "We trust your judgment," he said. "You don't need to approve every little thing. The mission is bigger now." And that night, as she walked the empty corridors of Veritas headquarters, she realized something chilling. The mission wasn't hers anymore. It had become theirs. She tried to reach out to Sundar. Not to explain. Not to apologize. Just to talk. But the message went unread. Days passed. Then, one evening, a package arrived at her home. No return label. Just her name. Handwritten in simple letters. Inside was a single item. A book. Old, worn, underlined. The Art of Being Right by Arthur Schopenhauer. Inside, a note. You'll be remembered. The question is, by whom and for what? S.P.A.A.N.Y.A. as single quotes. S fingers trembled as she held the book. Because deep down, she knew this wasn't a punishment. It was a reminder of the choice she still had. But the window was closing. And then the twist came. At a closed-door investor meeting. Neil unveiled the newest version of the AI system. AANYA single quotes S model twisted. Modified, accelerated. Now marketed not for education, but for talent profiling. A global system that could scan candidates, predict workplace performance, and score emotional compliance in real time. It was no longer about helping children. It was about controlling potential. Identifying who to hire, who to reject, who to watch. The audience clapped. And Aanya felt the floor vanish beneath her. Later, in a secure room, she confronted Neil. "This isn't what we built," she said. He didn't flinch. Double quotes. "No," he said. "It's what we needed to build. Your model was too small. This will change the world. You're using it to judge people, label them, decide who deserves opportunity." "And," he asked, "every system already does that. We're just making it faster, more precise." Aanya shook her head. "You're twisting what I created." Neil stepped closer. "You gave it to us. You signed. You accepted the power. Now you want the innocence too? You can't have both." She stared at him. And for the first time since she joined Veritas, she was afraid, not of Neil. But of herself, because part of her had known and chosen it anyway. Far away. In a quiet corner of the world, Sundar watched the press conference. He didn't speak. He just closed the laptop. And walked into a quiet room. Inside, waiting, was a team he had quietly assembled. Young minds, diverse thinkers, quiet rebels. He turned to them and said softly, "It's time." Asterisk, the redemption equationist storm was building over the bay, outside Veritas headquarters. The waves crashed harder against the rocky shoreline, wind tearing through the steel bones of the city. Inside, everything was calm, controlled, and painfully precise, just the way Neil Varma liked it. But in one room, on the 28th floor, something was breaking. Anya stood alone in front of a glass wall, staring down at the city below. Her reflection looked back at her, composed, sharp, powerful. The reflection the world now admired. But behind her eyes, a fractured out for weeks, she had watched her creation evolve into something monstrous. Her model designed to uplift overlooked. Children was now being installed in corporate systems, recruitment platforms, even government agencies, not to help people grow, to measure them, to judge them before they had a chance to begin. They called it precision hiring. Anya called it invisible exclusion. She had fought back at first gently, then more forcefully. She had argued for boundaries, for ethical review, for transparency. But Veritas didn't want boundaries, it wanted dominance, And now she was complicit. That night, Anya unlocked her private archive. Tucked between her earliest notes and dusty prototype builds, she found an older version of the AI, clean, transparent, still aligned with her original vision. It didn't have the aggressive prediction models, the behavioral tags, the emotional bias filters. It was human, flawed, but honest. She stared at it for hours. Then, with shaking fingers, she started writing code again. Not to update. Not to improve. To protect. She was building a fail-safe, a tool that could disable the live version of the AI now spreading across Veritas systems. It would take days. It would leave a trace. And if caught, she could be ruined. But none of that mattered anymore because this wasn't about reputation. It was about redemption. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Sundar stood in a quiet room, filled with light and silence. The team he had gathered, 5 young engineers, thinkers, educators, was working late into the night. Number investors, no media, no noise. They were building something new, a system that would give power back to the people using it, a model that could learn but also listen, one that prioritized empathy over speed, growth over scores. They didn't try to compete with Veritas. They were building a counterbalance. Sundar single quotes S idea wasn't to fight fire with fire. It was to bring light to the places Neil had built in shadow. And when one of the team members asked him why he hadn't spoken out publicly, why he hadn't tried to stop Veritas more directly, Sundar simply said, "Sometimes, if you push too hard, you break the student you're trying to save." He hadn't given up on and then why a he was waiting, hoping, believing, but time was running out because Neil had noticed the change in her, the distance, the questions, the tension behind her eyes, and he wasn't a man who ignored warning signs. On a cold Monday morning, he walked into her office without knocking. "You're working late," he said, eyeing her screen. "What are you building?" Anya looked up slowly. "Just a personal side project. Cleaning up old code." Neil smiled, but his eyes were sharp. "Don't forget the contract you signed," he said. "Everything you build here belongs to Veritas." Anya nodded, but inside, a quiet war was raging. He didn't know yet, but soon. He would. That night, she ran the final test. The fail-safe worked. It didn't delete the AI. It didn't destroy anything. It simply returned it to version 0. Her version. The one that helped. The one that listened. But before she could activate it, a warning flashed on her screen. Unauthorized breach detected. System lockdown initiated. Her access was revoked. In seconds. Her screen went black. Veritas security systems had caught her. And then her door opened. Neil stood there, flanked by 2 guards. "You disappoint me," he said. "I thought you were smarter." Anya stood, her voice calm. "You don't understand what this is doing." "I understand perfectly," Neil said. "We're shaping the future. You were either going to lead it or become irrelevant." "You're using fear," she said. "Bias. Control. And you were fine with that when it made you famous." He snapped. Those words hit hard because they were not entirely wrong. But that didn't make them right. The next day, Veritas prepared for a global press conference. They were going to announce full-scale deployment of their AI across 5 major industries. The entire world would watch. But what Neil didn't know was that Anya had made a backup dot. She had encrypted it, sent it outside Veritas servers dot in just 1 hour before the conference. Someone received it. Sundar. The press room was full. Cameras. Flashing. Executives seated. Screens lit up. Neil walked to the podium, ready to unveil a world where every human would be categorized, scored, optimized. We believe in a future where potential is not wasted, he said, where we no longer guess at talent, but measure it with precision. But before the final slide could appear, every screen went black. For a moment. Silence. Then a message appeared, written in plain white text. No machine should decide a human's worth. Anya gasps rippled through the room, and then the lights returned, but the data was gone. The system had been disabled. Every corporate client server reverted to version 0. The original model, the one that gave people second chances, the one that saw potential, not just patterns. Neil was furious. He tried to track the breach, file lawsuits, launch counter campaigns, but the world had already seen the truth, and the world chose differently. And YA resigned publicly. The next day. Her statement was short. I forgot why I built it. Now I remember. Any weeks later, she returned to Delhi. No headlines, no crowds. Just quiet. And as she walked through the old campus, past the lecture halls and dusty bookshelves where it all began, she saw a man sitting under a tree. Reading a worn-out book. She approached slowly. Sundar looked up and smiled. You look older, he said softly. And Y smiled back. You always said, the world doesn't need louder voices, just braver ones. Sundar closed the book. Are you ready to start again? He asked. Yes, she whispered. And this time, she meant it. Not with rage. Not with revenge. But with purpose. Asterisk. And somewhere deep in the roots of a new system, far from the noise of power, single line of code waited patiently to be rewritten, not for profit. Not for pride. But for people. Asterisk.